understand that the government has few and limited powers, and get them to only legislate and only spend money on those things that are constitutionally authorized. And I'd also like to see that judges, if I'm asked to vote for the confirmation of a Supreme Court justice, I'd like to find a justice that actually understands the Constitution, that knows that it's not up for interpretation. The Constitution is not written in Chinese. You don't have to interpret it. You have to enforce it, and they have to enforce it against the federal government, because that's why it was written. It was written to protect the people from the government and to make sure the federal government. To limit our freedom, and the government does whatever it wants. They turned it upside down.
What's the second question?
The next one, you've talked a lot about cutting spending on different areas. What about cutting spending of Congress themselves? Copenhagen, we just spent a lot of money so people could go on a trip. They just got a raise. We're spending money for Haiti, and I have no problems with helping out other people. If the taxpayers want to send money, they can. But if we're broke, how can you convince them to stop spending?
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely makes no sense for the United States government to borrow money to China to give it to Haiti. I mean, we don't have any money, right? So we're just going into debt. If we had it, fine. But yeah, I mean, I certainly think that individuals, can give money to whatever charitable causes we can. But we have to understand that we are in trouble. I don't even know why congressmen are going anywhere. They should cancel all these trips.
Yeah.
What's the point? We're broke. They've also got these gigantic staffs. I mean, we need to cut money all over the place in Washington, D.C., and we can certainly start with congressional staffs and congressional perks. Why do they deserve a perk? Look at what they've done to the country.
Pelosi's planes.
Well, why does she need a plane?
I don't know.
I mean, look, they should just stay in Washington. They travel around the world. I mean, we're broke. I mean, how can we afford doing all this stuff? They have to concentrate on the problems in the country. Unfortunately, they don't realize that they cause the problems. And so what we need to do is streamline the government, but we need to abolish all these rules and regulations and departments that have screwed up the country. I mean, how did we exist 50 years ago as a country? Think about all the regulations that didn't exist 50 years ago. Think about all the spending that didn't exist. But the country was still here. The country was thriving. In fact, it was better off than it is today. We were the world's leading economic power. We were the biggest exporter of manufactured goods. We were the world's wealthiest creditor nation. Now, with all this government and all these rules and regulations, we're broke. Our factories are gone. We owe the world trillions. Nobody has any savings. Every household has 2 people working, some of them 2 jobs, and they got no savings. The country is broke, and it's because of all this government. So we got to just turn the tide. We can't accept this government as some kind of, that it's always going to be here. We've got to shrink it and have our faith in the private sector. Because if we destroy all these government jobs and get rid of them, we will have private sector jobs again. We'll have real jobs that are productive, which is what we need. Because all the government can do is create work. But they can't create productivity. The problem with a bunch of government jobs is nobody has any real purchasing power. Everybody in the Soviet Union was employed. They didn't have an unemployment problem. The problem they had is they couldn't buy anything with their wages. And that's where we're headed. We need real productive jobs, not make work. And you don't get that from government programs. You get that from entrepreneurs, you get that from savings, you get that from capital. Because economies only grow based on lack of spending. They grow from underconsumption. But the problem is, anytime someone in this country tries to save money, they have a panic in Washington, and they try to stimulate us back into the malls. They think we have to keep spending money, and that starts at the top. We need to change that around. We need to stop spending money from the top down. The government has to stop spending. Individuals have to stop spending, because that's the only way we can save. That's the only way we can rebuild our capital and grow our economy.
Hold on. What's the last one?
Are you in this for the long haul? You could possibly be looking at a primary. You probably have thought about this. But what are you going to do to make sure that you're the candidate that winds up on the ballot in case of primary?
Well, I mean, if I'm on the primary, I'm assuming I'm going to be on the ballot. Either I'm going to get the votes at the convention, or I'll gather the signatures around the state. But the answer to your question, yeah, I'm in it till the end. I mean, obviously, if I lose the primary in August, then I'm out. I mean, I'm not planning a third party run. I want to run as a Republican. I think that's my best chance of winning, is running as a Republican. And I do want to win, and that's my intention. I've raised money now from, I think, 17,000 people, maybe more. My average donation is less than $100. And I've done that without a single fundraiser. I've done that, I haven't even sent out one letter asking anyone in Connecticut to give me any money. I've received money from people all around the country who believe in what I'm saying, who believe in liberty and the Constitution and capitalism. They think I'm the person to bring those principles to Washington. And so I'm in it, to win the race. I've got a campaign team that I recently put together. I opened up my headquarters maybe a month ago. I got into the race later than the other candidates, mainly because I really wasn't planning on it. I mean, this is something that came out of left field. I was drafted into this race by people around the world that emailed me and encouraged me to run. So it really was something that I hadn't been planning it for years. So now I'm in it. And my bigger media campaign is going to start. My media buys start in March, and so I will be running ads on television. You will be seeing things from me in your mailboxes, and I think I still have plenty of time to introduce myself to the state. And I think that a lot of people think they only have two choices between a career politician and a business person of with a background that maybe is not totally suited to the task at hand. And I think that when they see that there's a third option and they look at my background and the things that I've done in my life and the things that I've said, I think a lot of people are going to support my candidacy.
So is this going to be an actions speak louder than words campaign? Ken, what do you got?
The war on terror, where you stand.
Well, I'm obviously against terrorism. And I think that the main function of the federal government is to protect Americans, and that includes protecting us from terrorists. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the actions that we've done in the past have actually incited terrorism, and so I want to make sure that we don't do that. But I want to protect ourselves from the threats that do exist, and there are some threats, whether some of them are from our own making or some of them are not. But we need to protect the country. Unfortunately, what I don't like is a lot of the things that the government has done in this country under the name of terrorism. I think a lot of bad legislation has been passed under the guise of terrorism, such as, let's say, the Patriot Act, that really isn't doing much to fight terrorism, but has destroyed civil liberties in this country. It's destroyed financial privacy. I don't know if people in this room know this, but as a stockbroker, if any of you open up an account with me, I am legally required to scrutinize everything that you do. I have programs and I have people that are looking into your transactions, looking into the money you send and the money you take out, the things that you buy, looking for suspicious activity. Mainly, if we don't think that maybe you're not paying all the income taxes that you owe based on the transactions. And then if I see that, I am required to report you to the government, but I can't tell you because I can't tip you off. I have to tell the government that here's an individual that may or may not be committing a crime, so here's my evidence, go look at him. And if I don't do that, I can be fined, I can be put out of business, I can be jailed. So no American has any privacy anymore in their financial affairs, because when you're sitting across from a banker or a stockbroker, they are actually an unpaid IRS agent, an FBI agent, informing the government on everything you do. And all of this supposedly to fight terrorism. But of course, they named the bill the Patriot Act, but they should have called it the Unpatriotic Act, and then maybe people wouldn't have supported it. But there is no truth in legislation. Whenever you see a government bill, whatever the title of that bill is, it's doing the opposite. And so they use terrorism as a way to expand their power, and they scare us into surrendering our rights, and we can't do that. Yes, terrorism is a threat, we have to guard against it, but there is a huge threat coming out of Washington that is even more deadly and more important to our daily lives that we have to contain.
So our soldiers in Afghanistan.
Well, yeah, I think we have too many troops there. I was initially in favor of going into Afghanistan because, after all, that's where bin Laden was, and he's the guy that got us on 9/11, so it made sense to go into Afghanistan and get him. I don't understand why we couldn't do that. Meanwhile, he's not even there anymore, and we're sending in more troops. What is the purpose? What is the plan? I was initially against going into Iraq. I thought it was a mistake. I didn't know why we were, and I certainly didn't like occupying it. I mean, if we thought they had weapons of mass destruction there, if we knew where they were, then take them out. But why are we occupying the country? We can't even run our own country effectively. Why are we going around the world trying to do that? I mean, we've got bases in 160 countries or so. We got bases in Western Europe. Why? Why do we have bases in these countries? I mean, these government bases are like